You've landed at the edge of what medicine has known and what it's becoming. I'm Dr. Richard Rocker, and this is the Integrative Continuum, a podcast bridging biology, energy, and human potential. In each episode, we explore how quantum biology, frequency medicine, and ancient healing systems are transforming our understanding of health. This is where mitochondria meet meaning and blood work meets bioenergetics. Subscribe now and join me on the frontier of integrative healing, where science and soul are no longer separate. Hello, and welcome to the Integrative Continuum. This is the podcast where we explore health, performance, and human potential through a systems-based integrative lens, bridging the gap between conventional and functional approaches to better understand how the body truly works. As always, I stand by the truth as I know it and as I learn it. Today's episode is a powerful one, particularly for anyone interested in longevity, performance, and what it really means to age well. I'm joined by David Emerson Frost, master fitness trainer, life coach, internationally competitive rowing athlete, and author of the book Kaboomer, Thriving and Striving into Your 90s. David brings a unique blend of real-world experience and practical insight, with a background that spans military service, corporate leadership, and elite-level athletics. He has dedicated his work to helping individuals maintain strength, vitality, and independence well into later life. He is an NFPT certified master fitness trainer and rowing coach, as well as a national and world champion masters rower. Through his work and his book, David challenges the conventional narrative around aging, promoting a model of health that is not about decline, but about sustained performance, resilience, and purpose. His philosophy is simple, but powerful. Aging is inevitable, but decline is optional. In this conversation, we explore what it truly takes to maintain physical and mental capacity over time, the biggest mistakes people make as they age, and how to build a system that supports long-term health and performance. So with that, let's get into today's conversation. Welcome, David.
Thank you. It's wonderful to chat on any day that ends in a Y about my favorite topics, health and wellness.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, listen, David, you have a wealth of experience. You've written actually 2 books, so I'm sure we'll get into that. So, David, for people who may not be familiar with your work, can you give us a bit of your background and what led you into the space of longevity and performance?
Yes, and I'll try to keep my story a short one, not the unabridged one. So a competitive rower in college, or maybe I could back up even more. I was a Boy Scout, Boy Scouts of America, before lots of social issues came up with that great organization. But I was a chubby kid that couldn't do a pull-up. And my first challenge in life was to do a pull-up to get a merit badge. Then it was to run a mile. Then it was to get on the football team and learn how to wrestle. Then it was to get into the United States Naval Academy and take up a sport of rowing, which I'd never done before. So my collegiate experience set me up, and I found a mentor. And you know, if I could kind of paraphrase the term doctor, back to the Latin word to teach, probably the best teacher I've had in my life was not my parents. It was my surrogate father, my rowing coach. And I dedicated Kaboomer, the book that you nicely mentioned, Dr. Rocker, to Coach Ulrich, because he taught me mental toughness, resilience, digging a little deeper, and most importantly, it's not a mantra. There is no I in crew. So whether we talked about functional medicine or thriving and striving, we should think of it as a team sport. So life is going along, and happily married. My wife and I will celebrate 50 years of matrimonial bliss here in July. We have 2 wonderful kids, 3 wonderful grandkids, and life happened. I got busy in midlife, and lo and behold, I blew out my back, a pretty severe herniated L5-S1 disc. and all the therapy in the world could not delay, well, it delayed, but could not prevent the inevitable invasive surgery, spinal fusion. And that's what in 2001, and in fact, in September 2001, which was a terrible day for the world with terrorism and just heinous acts, I had my own personal problems. So, how I became a master fitness trainer after my athletic career was learning about my own rehab and post-hab. And as a college professor, I realized how much I liked to write and share as a teacher. So that kind of is, well, actually, it was probably longer than a short story, but injury was the trigger for me to get into what I'm doing in the third chapter of my life.
So essentially, that was the kind of the turning point or experience that shifted your perspective
Abs-
on health and aging. Yeah, yeah.
Very much
Okay.
so. And instead of just being passive, proactive, forward leaning, and holy smokes, what can I learn? I was a systems engineer in college, believe it or not.
Yeah,
How does that relate? Well, I think it nicely relates with integrative medicine, doesn't it? You have inputs, you have transformation, you have outputs, and you have the feedback loop in that system. So that is my why. I like to take a complex thing like the human body and try to understand it for performance, for longevity, and try to accept the kryptonites that do come up. And yes, I have kryptonite, and probably most of us do, right, Dr. Rocker? Yet our bodies are
absolutely.
amazingly good at hiding lurking kryptonites. And in my case, I know one of your wonderful guests talked about more than the average blood test. And I had an epiphany just a year and a half ago when a cardiologist shared with me, when you get a call from the cardiologist abnormally, it's kind of like, why should I be alarmed? Well, the cardiologist said, don't be alarmed. You have the coronary arteries of a 92-year-old. Now, believe it or not, I'm not 92. I'm getting there, but I'm not 92. And in fact, I hope to get there. I hope to become a septenarian with a little luck and a lot of interventions and adaptations. But, that proxy test, the calcium scan, in my case, was life-changing. And at first it was the spinal fusion, but then to find out I wasn't invincible. I was pretty good in the athletic realm. Holy smokes, I have dis-ease. And, maybe I was in denial. Maybe I was just happy-go-lucky. But when you get a wake-up call, that kind of clarion call that says, hey, dude, you better deal with something. So the last year and a half have been particularly defining for me as I write my third book, which talks about preventing a preventable disease in most cases, atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease. In America, 80% of Americans have some ASCVD, heart disease, and most of it is preventable, or if not, at least we can change the trajectory of its development. And as a layman, as a practitioner, not as a clinician, I say American could do better. And I know one of your guests talked about the sick care system, what I call the sick care system.
Yes. Yeah.
America has a wonderful sick care system. It waits to diagnose something. You have a big problem. It intervenes and oftentimes saves your life and extends your life. And yet, holy smokes, if I knew that I had the inflammatory marker that I do, lipoprotein A, when I was 40, would I have changed my dose response of exercise? Absolutely. Would I have maybe changed my work-life balance to lower the cortisol and the chronic stressors of life? Absolutely. So, hey, I can't go back and find 31 years. But if I could, it's nice to accept technology that now has these wonderful CRP, APOS-B, lipoprotein A. I am blessed with so many metabolic and blood check marks, such as my triglyceride and HDL. It's to die for. No, it's not to die for. It's to live long for. And yet I've got this inflammatory marker that says you better deal with that. It's so so that awareness has made me realize what an Olympic champion told me is that when you adapt, when you surround yourself with resources, and when you become a student of your endeavor, you're probably going to do all right. So that's my mission. It's to surround myself with good resources, talk to nice people, share ideas, share actions, and then become a student of my endeavor to share my learnings and my mistakes so that others can thrive and strive.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big philosophy of mine as well. I always say the learning never stops, no matter how old we get. And sometimes even when we learn something and then maybe 10, 15, 20 years later, you go, well, maybe that's not exactly how it is. And then we have to have enough gumption in ourselves to say, hey, maybe I was wrong and maybe I need to change it. And that's the only way we evolve is when we're able to question things. That's why I hate that saying there, the science is settled. I'm going, is it? Is it ever settled?
Mm.
It's evolving.
Oh, and if I could pile on, Dr. Rocker, in the last 6 months, I heard three notable sports cardiologists say that they need another 10 years of clinical study with double blind, all the right
Yeah.
study criteria to establish a better definition of what dose response is for the duration and the intensity of exercise. Of course, we know that exercise is good for us, but is it true that more is better? No. What
No.
is endurance? I hopefully in 2 weeks will help set a 24-hour endurance record with another gentleman for indoor rowing. So we're going to try to do, let's see, zero point 0.6 times 300 kilometers, about 182 miles in 24 hours. Is that going to inflame my body? Absolutely. So I heard one wonderful sports cardiologist share, you should do a marathon once for the experience. It's a terrible way to burn a pound of body fat. That's it. A pound of body fat, bragging rights, maybe you get a bling. Yet the inflammation that it causes with the cytokines is just extraordinary, and I wouldn't do it a lot. So what am I doing at the age of 73? I'm going to try to set a world record in 2 weeks for doing my share of 183 kilometers.
Well, we
So
wish you the very best for that.
I
Yeah.
need I
Yeah.
need a lot of
Yeah.
good backing.
Very good. So,
But
so you,
isn't that interesting? These wonderful Dr. Levitt, Dr. Churchill, and Dr. He's the doctor for the Boston Marathon. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'm sorry, but they say we need another 10 years of study as we learn more about the body, its resolve, its resilience, what it can take, and trying to get back to homeostasis. It's fascinating. The best in the world say we need another 10 years. It's a
yeah, yeah. I suppose for some studies, yeah. But then there are some things that we know, and for a fact that okay, let's say in the context of aging, that well, we need to maintain muscle mass. Maybe we can lose bone density, but again, is this a factor of aging or is this a preventable thing? Which I believe it's a preventable thing because I'm doing it every day in the clinic with people, and I know you know that. We just need other people to know that, right?
Absolutely. And I think back when before I could do that first pull up, President John F. Kennedy established the President's Council on Physical Fitness because he saw some things. Maybe it was fast food, back in the days of TV dinners, or maybe television was drawing kids instead of being outside and throwing a baseball or rucking around a hill in the countryside. But so that was in 19 maybe 62. And here we are, 38 and almost 60 years. Yeah, 60 years later, America has never been fatter. It's never had worse health conditions for high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and mental illnesses than ever before. Yes, we're living longer, but is 77 for America a good longevity span? Maybe. I would like to beat that.
Yeah.
Our Social Security system says I'm dead at age 85. Social Security system might be right, but I beg to differ with them. And I absolutely positively agree that yes, there's that genetic component and there's that environmental thing, but so much of it, and I would say 80% until age 80 is us. It's what we do. It's how we live. Um, I'm kind of notorious for making portmanteaus or compound words, but the one that I share in this instance is glothic. Two of the seven original sins are gluttony and sloth.
Yeah.
And from the layman's perspective, so President Kennedy was unable to change America's trajectory for obesity, poor fitness, longevity. 60 years later, maybe instead of top down with the president, maybe bottoms up. Maybe people can inspire other people to say, you know, these things are preventable. It's not a preordained thing that you're going to die from heart disease, even though that's our top cause of morbidity, I think, in the world, certainly in America. And if 80% of heart disease is preventable with avoiding gluttony and sloth, what's wrong with that equation, you know? So so let's change that equation, Dr. Rocker. You and I on both West Coasts, Ireland and California.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
That's right. Well, we're doing our best there to get rid of some of these myths, and I think I've always said I think for the probably the last 80 years, the narrative had kind of really shifted in terms of I think exercise and definitely nutrition, where it seems we're in a time and an age right now where everything seems totally upside down. It seems inverted, and if you're listening to the mainstream, it's pretty well. You should probably do the opposite of what the mainstream is telling you, and you'll probably be a lot better. Uh, and then we would go, well, why is that? And unfortunately, there's a lot of money in different organizations that really rely on people being not sick. Sorry, sick or half sick. We don't want to kill you, but we don't want you to be optimal either.
By the way, that goes for priests. I had a wonderful Episcopalian priest tell me, an Anglican priest tell me, we got to keep these old people alive longer. They're the ones that fund the church. So, you know, if we can get them into church in a wheelchair, by golly, that's what we're going to do. So, yeah.
uh, So, okay, so you've had a very diverse career, if I understand correct, military, you're in the corporate world, athletics. So how did these experiences shape or your approach to health?
Yeah, and it's kind of that integrated lining up of the pluses and minuses. So my
Mm.
own portfolio, I call it my physical bank.
Yeah.
If I can start with that side, because I wrote about it in Kaboomer, you know, we can make things really complicated. As you shared, life sometimes is telling us to do something, and really there's a simple response that is counterintuitive but may work better. So I took a look at the idea of fitness and longevity. And I said, how about a framework? How about a model that maybe people can remember? So I came up with a 7S. Well, it's been around forever, but I kind of codified it. If you put together strength, stability, stamina, stretching, restorative sleep, anti-inflammatory sustenance, and don't stress, you've got one heck of a physical bank that probably is going to have you outlive, outlast, and do it happily for more than your peers. So that's what I call a kaboomer, is someone that figures out that integrated model of not stressing, of getting that restorative sleep, which, by the way, I probably would have to arm wrestle others as to whether strength, sleep, or sustenance is the most important to longevity. And I think the answer is yes, they're all very important, as well as the other four: stability, not falling, endurance, you know, the stamina for staying alive, hiking through the hillsides of Western Ireland. Those things, our bodies were made to move and to reach homeostasis after being challenged with imposed demands. I call it the SAID principle, specific adaptations to imposed demands. And to a point, back to the dose response, to a point, with appropriate stressors in strength, stability, stamina, stretching, we're probably going to do all right. Maybe we'll become one of my favorite books, by the way. I don't know. It's a little book by two doctors, The World's Healthiest People. Very practical, not a lot of clinical stuff. And there's some really good lessons in there. Some of them are intuitive, some of them are counterintuitive. So that's the fitness part. The military part kind of told me that it's a team effort, whether you're talking about a crazy military evolution in Southwest Asia, or whether you're talking about peacekeeping operations. An army is by definition a group of people, complementary people, not all the same people, but complementary people to work toward a common goal. So the military was extraordinarily useful in my own case for compiling lessons of life and doing important things. My kids think it's absolutely hysterical now when I shared, we couldn't talk about it in the old days, but I shared that I was responsible for part of our nation's nuclear stockpile on my ship. We had
Yeah.
4 weapons that just happened to, if we used them, they would cause a big bang. But I didn't want to cause a big bang theory, right? So, nor did I want to lose them. And I don't know if you can see the background, but my office is not all that squared away. It's a little unkempt. So my kids say, "Dad, you can't find your pen. How do I know you didn't lose any nuclear weapons?" And the answer is, well, it was important, and I didn't. But that common good, that common mission, was probably the most important thing from my military years in my career. And I thank any listeners in America that are paying for my retirement. I thank them very much. Corporate America, for me, was all about projects, getting things done, and refining soft skills. If you have autonomy, mastery, and purpose, I argue you're going to do your best work. Your soft skills of motivation, empathy, self-realization, self-actualization, and social skills really help you get along. Yes, there are outliers. Perhaps somebody from South Africa can have a personality disorder and be the world's richest person. But most of us really can thrive with soft skills like motivation and self-realization to move on. So those are 3 of the elements that you asked about. The military taught me there was more than me. There's no, it was a team effort. The fitness taught me that the mind body had to be aligned for high performance. And my own operating system, I learned a little bit in corporate America. What I call my operating system is, as a systems guy, I like to take complex problems, break them down, and try to share frameworks or guidelines or benchmarks with others so perhaps they can embrace them if it fits, such as that 7S model for being a kaboomer. So.
Mm. So you use the term kaboomer and you have it in your book. So what does that actually mean to you, kaboomer?
Well, thank you for asking. And we start off Kaboomer with a knock knock joke, actually, Dr. Rocker. So a baby boomer and a Kaboomer come up to the door and knock knock. Person answers at the door and said, "Who's there? Who's there?" And the answer is, well, it's a baby boomer and a Kaboomer who. And well, the answer is a baby boomer takes 2 pills at a time and a kaboomer takes 2 steps at a time. So kaboomer is, I didn't invent the word, but I use the word as doing something naturally and avoiding polypharmacy and hopefully living longer and living better.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned before you talked about thriving into your 90s. So what are the biggest misconceptions people have about aging?
Absolutely. And again, technology, the study of crafting and things that serve us is changing. We now believe, and I don't know all the exact studies right now, Dr. Rocker, but we now believe that our own lifestyle and what we do for nurturing our beings gets us into our 80s. And after that, apparently, longevity genes kick in and take more of a role in, I don't know if it's 60-40, 70-30, 80-20, or 100%. The world's longest living lady that we know about, Jean Calmet, the French woman, signed a deal with her landlord. And she said, "Of course, I'll let you have my apartment when I die." Well, guess who died first? The landlord. So,
Yeah.
but she had some aches and pains. She smoked a little. She drank some good French wine. She had some niggles. Yet, there's probably no doubt that she had a longevity gene, which was unmasked and helped her. But she apparently had quite a good life well after becoming a centenarian. Is that for all of us? Probably not. And yet, numbers being what they are, the fastest growing part of the American population is 90-year-olds and 100-year-olds. It's a small denominator, but we're living longer. But the question is, can we take 2 steps at a time and rely less on 2 pills at a time? Um, so the misconception is that there's this linear glide slope downward to your epitaph and death. Now we've heard, and I think it to be fairly credible, it's very much nonlinear. I think it was a Stanford study within the last 6 months, Dr. Rocker, that, well, at least for guys at the cellular level, there is a knee in the curve, a bounce in the curve at about age 44 and about age 60. So it's not linear. By the way, performance isn't linear either, is it? There's a lot of L's and S curves in life. So we're learning that there are these knees in the long lifespan curve. And what are we doing about it to maybe dampen the change or to enhance the plus side of these nonlinearities? And it kind of circles back to dose response, doesn't it? We talked about, we're learning that too much exercise is bad for you. No exercise is probably bad for you. And somewhere in the middle is the right answer. We just don't know what the right answer is. So the trajectory of aging is now challenged. The old conventional thing, you got your gold watch, you're on the planet to procreate and then hang around, see the grandkids, and then kick the bucket. That's not necessarily true. And, we see people like Warren Buffett, who is not known as a fitness guy, and yet he was mentally active. He had a great sense of humor, and he moved enough and kept his mind agile enough to run one of the world's largest corporations well into his 90s. He probably still is power steering it, Berkshire Hathaway, even though he's not the guy. So isn't Arm & Hammer was another guy who I think he ran that oil company when he was 100 years old. So the idea of 65 and done is a myth that really needs to be changed, and we need a new rubric for aging adults. And there's lots of talk. There's lots of wonderful and well-known people. The Surgeon General, for instance, shared this thing that I remembered because it's simple. I'm, a systems guy, but a simple guy. You want to better your brain, eat berries. You want to better your body, eat beans and exercise. How about that? Let's live to 100 by berries, beans, and exercise, or adopting an anti-glothic behavior. So we don't need to slow down. We're not a bristlecone pine tree. We're not a mushroom. Mammals, by definition, have mobility, and we should move more. Yes, I'm sitting, but I do have my feet on a unstable surface, so I'm exercising my perineal nerves and all that to try to make use of the time where I'm sitting. I could also be using, because grip strength is such a biomarker for longevity, you could be flexing and extending your hands while you're doing other things, perhaps not during your clinical day, but when I'm writing or whatever, I can certainly do things like that. So another myth is that I think it's the main thing that the rules, the rubrics, the guidelines are changing. And as we learn, until I had that detailed blood work, which identified my kryptonite, I couldn't explain why I had heart disease. And I think the myth is that the doctor's going to tell you when something's wrong. I think the myth that has to be busted is that we should, with a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of exploratory, a little bit of outreach, get in and see the white coat doctor and try to look early, preventative ways or early remediation of things that our bodies are very good at hiding. So heart disease doesn't magically show up at age 71 or 72 or whatever. In my case, it was there lurking. And unfortunately, my body was very good at hiding it until the doctor on a whim said, well, you've got a pretty big ticker. You've got great VO2 max. but you had a little discomfort in your chest. Let's figure out what's going on. Oh, what the heck? Get a calcium scan. So a myth is that in America, the myth is the system's going to take care of you. And what I think we have to bust is we have to take care of ourselves and be an absolutely almost obnoxious advocate for your own wellness in dealing with our healthcare system. So that is, to me, that's very profound. If I didn't push for the detailed work to understand, even after massive exercise, my CRP is fine. I have no problem with APOS-B. I have insulin sensitivity to live long and prosper, and yet I have arteries that are calcified because of a very high marker lipoprotein A. If I had known that earlier, if the rubric had changed to do preventative screening, would I have changed my life? Absolutely. I may be dumb, but I'm not stupid, right?
Yeah,
If, hey,
yeah,
hey, you're going to have the coronary arteries of a 92-year-old 22 years early, I would act on that. So,
yeah,
probably the biggest myth, I'm sorry to wrap it around, but probably the biggest myth is we have become accepting of very influential, very affluent white coats in America who rarely do the functional integrated practices of healing, of treatment before you reach that threshold of chest discomfort or these other things that our bodies are so good at hiding. So that's probably number
yeah,
one.
yeah. I think I think it's the same in many places in the world. It's just not America. I can talk for Ireland and the UK here as well. Listen, there's not the statistics, the obesity and disease statistics. They're getting higher and higher and higher. And however, I've been here in Ireland for 24 years now, and I've seen a change over those years. And I've always said I see Ireland becoming Americanized, and
Oh,
I don't mean that in a very critical way, but it's it's I think America has, what is it, third on the list on the worst health statistics, or is something along those lines like that. So
it's so
um,
embarrassing, and that's not the type of diplomacy that we want to be sharing with our fellow Earthmates. It's
yeah,
embarrassing. The Golden Arches and Pepsi Cola are two of the biggest ambassadors of America, and they're probably two of the worst that we could
yeah,
have.
I think the saying is to spend the most on healthcare but have the worst health, something along those lines there. Yeah, but
That's a
it's
paradox that we got to change. That's
yeah, yeah, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. The Unfortunately, the standard systems that are in place, they're not really put there for optimal health, and it really is to a point now where people need to become proactive, and they need to look into and fight, actually really fight for their own health. And um, I run a clinic here, and it's a private clinic, and but it's unfortunate that when somebody goes to their doctor, that they can only get, this much of a test here when people may want a lot more, but they're simply not able to get it. So they'll have to go outside of that system. They'll have to pay outside of that as well in order to get what they need. Like you got the information that you required. Um, and you're starting to see people now, they're starting to fly to other countries where they maybe have a little bit more open system. Like I know some of the Eastern European countries, when I've gone traveling, you could walk right into a lab and you could say, I want this, this, and this. They take your blood and you get your results in the afternoon or the day after. And it's like, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it? Right. And that's a
there.
good question, which gets into a lot of politics, doesn't it?
Oh my goodness. And and maybe this gets back, just maybe it starts today on this wonderful Tuesday. Maybe if we get folks more self-sufficient and more self-deterministic. In my family tree, Ralph Waldo Emerson was a transcendentalist, and he talked about the individual. And over time, I think we've become accepting of the crutches of our what was called the healthcare system, yet I disparagingly call it the sick care system. I wish there were more people that were almost obnoxious like me to push for root causes. Now that I know that our bodies are so very good at hiding things. So we have and you know, America's a pretty big country, 345 million people. Fitness is so undemocratic. It's based on zip code, it's based on heredity, it's based on many things that are um, should be changed. I don't, you know, I can't change them today or in the next 20 years. And yet, for us being a republic or claiming to have some democratic principles, to me, less, there's nothing less sacred than the general, you know, our Constitution says the general welfare. We're not doing a very good job with the general welfare. We throw out a lot of seeds and crutches, but we don't make people self-reliant in the old frontier days, you know. And that to
Yeah,
me is a
yeah,
real travesty. And my kids cannot afford the sick care system that they're inheriting. And I believe that. I can't, you know, I haven't done the actuarial numbers yet. You know, we hear that our safety net is not going to be fully funded in 2030. And that's alarming, not for me. I'm blessed. Maybe it's okay, you know, age and treachery. I'm okay. But I worry
mm,
about the kids and grandkids that are promised this safety net that's going to have a lot of holes in it. And
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
preventable. It's preventable. So preventable.
yeah,
Ah.
absolutely. Um, there's another phrase, like you said, you have a lot of great words and phrases. So there's a phrase that you use in your book, down aging. Can you explain that concept for us, please?
I'd love to. And if I could share that we all have calendar ages. We're blessed to be born on a certain day. And at our first birthday, we've had a one lap around the wonderful sun. So that's our calendar age. And yet, fitness age, if we do it right and more skill than luck, we can down age and perform as if our bodies were younger. I
Mm.
just was lucky enough to row with 4 Olympians in a rowing race last weekend. Was I the slowest guy in the boat? Yes. You know, the guy that sat in front of me just won a bronze medal in Paris. 25-year-old, a national team, a bronze medal winner. Yet I was able to not embarrass them, and I was able to row credibly because I take it to heart that I want to down age and not act my calendar age. I want to do things in the gym, whether it's pull-ups or deadlifts or um, uh, doing a 24-hour endurance event on the indoor rower. I want to do things that are special because the human body is capable of doing special things. So down aging, I don't like superlatives. I'm a pretty basic guy. I was born in Vermont, you know, one of the original colonies. I'm a pretty simple guy. Um, so I don't like super aging and I don't like superlatives like that because I think they're disingenuous. Yet down aging, we can prove the Mayo Clinic, America's Mayo Clinic, has a set of standards for aging Americans. Your flexibility and sit to reach. Can you get up from the ground without using your hands? What is your grip strength? These types of very important biomarkers are there, and if you've worked at it, and if you have a little bit of luck with genetics, hopefully you've down aged. So to me, it's the difference between your calendar age and your ability to perform at years. Uh, you're competing as a peer with younger people, and that's pretty cool. So
Yeah, yeah. So then you might have touched on some of these before, but what are the biggest drivers of decline that you see in people as they age?
yes, I think muscle loss. I mean, it's
Okay.
inevitable. We're all going to have. Maybe there's an exception, and maybe Samson was the exception. I don't know in the Bible, but generally we're going to lose muscle mass. This is a terrible phrase, sarcopenia, loss of flesh.
Mhm.
And we know that at about age 30, if you do not challenge your muscles, your connective tissue, your joints to move and move heavy stuff, that you are going to lose your muscle mass at a rate at the normal sarcopenia rates, which is like 1% per year, which is terrible. Uh,
Mhm.
but if you can change that trajectory, if I can only lose half of the muscle mass at age 73 that my peers lose, I'm better off. And more we know that maybe not 1,000, I haven't counted all the benefits of having functional muscle, our sarcomeres. But there are things like higher metabolism, avoiding falls. Many of the things that affect our morbidity are related to functional strength. It doesn't mean boulder shoulders or bulging biceps or, beach body, things like that. It means, can I do more than my activities of daily life? And can I, you mentioned a second book, Dr. Rocker. Thank you. The second book is called Strong to Save, and I mean that. That's an old English nautical phrase. And in the days of wooden sailing ships, it was often the mind and the brawn of the sailor that got the ship back to port. So I find that at middle age, we give up on muscle mass. Oh, it's inevitable. You're going to lose muscle. Yes, it's inevitable, yet the trajectory can be changed. And it takes a little time, a little forethought. It takes surrounding yourself with good people, and it takes being a student of your endeavor. But I think number one is truly skeletal muscle. Now, having said that, we know that the cardiac muscle has more mitochondria, and it never rests. My quads can rest, but the heart
Yeah.
never rests. So it's so extraordinary that we want to remember to honor the mitochondria and our hearts too. So I would say number one is muscle loss. Number two is senescence, another S word, senescence. And isn't it interesting that senescence come from I'm not a Latin scholar, but senescence come from the same word as senile and Senate. Senate. Let me think about what happens in the U.S. Senate. Just kidding. But senescence means that we need a tune-up, right? We have what I call zombie cells. That's probably not, I know it's not the correct medical term. And yet we get sludge in our systems. And if we don't intentionally, as we get older, if we don't intentionally find ways to do the autophagy to purge that sludge, our system gets clogged. Our system needs a tune-up. So number one, sarcopenia. Number two, senescence. And number three, sleep. Now, for the guys with their urinary tract issues, we could talk about that for hours, and hopefully there are natural ways other than a bunch of pills to help guys sleep through the night. But I would say the top three, Dr. Rocker, are sarcopenia, senescence, and lack of restorative sleep. And we tend to accept it, right? During COVID, I think everybody probably binge watched more than they should have TV programs, but that COVID. And by the way, the only time I had COVID, I was in Athenry, and I had the nicest integrative doctor. We didn't know what to do. My wife and I both came down with COVID on a tour, and we missed the Cliffs of Moher, but we had the nicest conversation with the pharmacist and a doctor who said, okay, I just want you to wait it out. Athenry is a pretty nice town. Go out and walk, and you'll get better, and you can fly home when you feel ready. To me, that was perfect medicine for me. That was diagnosis, treatment, and well-being, all with a doctor I had never met, and it all happened in Athenry. But so those are the big three, sarcopenia, senescence, and lack of restorative sleep. And they're all, maybe not, you can't always have restorative sleep, but we can all do better, I argue.
Yeah.
Naturally. Naturally.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so let me put this out at you. So, how important is movement versus nutrition versus mindset, and how may they interact?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I think that's a wonderful Venn diagram, and the union of those, the interaction of nutrition, motion, and mind. And isn't it, we have a saying, one of the busiest airports in America is Las Vegas, McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. I go to Las Vegas to people watch. I am not a lucky bettor, although I did pick the national basketball champion last night, so that was lucky. But we talk about lost wages. But one of the keys to this intersection that you just mentioned of lifestyle, of motion, is the vagus nerve, that information superhighway. So how many folks don't rub their ears enough to stimulate the vagus nerve. How many people don't hum enough? How many people don't exercise enough? How many people don't take hot and cold showers to exercise their information superhighway that connects the mind and the gut and most of the major organs? So I think it's a tremendously important intersection, but in that union is well-being, and it's driven by how you do small things on a daily basis to make that Venn diagram really, really, really strong. Um,
Mm.
you know, you could be the strongest person in the world and still die at age 59 for any number of reasons. Yet, if you have an agile mind that is that you eat berries, and because exercise is so important to the oxygen. I mean, our brain is a wonderful organ. A forebearer of mine named Robert Frost, a shirt sleeve relative, said the mind is a wonderful organ. It starts working the moment you wake up and only stops when you go to the office. But anyway, that's but the
Yeah, yeah.
mind really, I say it needs rest because isn't it amazing? It doesn't have its own cleansing. I mean, it has its own cleansing system. It doesn't use the lymphatics. It needs oxygen and sugar. And if we keep the inflammation out and if we keep the brain nourished, hopefully we're going to do a better job with these dementia-related diseases, which is undemocratic in America. It hits the women harder than the men. I don't really understand all the reasons, yet I do know that we can all do better, but we do want to pay special attention to things like dementia-related diseases in women because they happen more in women than men as they age.
Yeah, I think there may be some dietary and some stress components to that because when we see people with elevated homocysteine levels, the research clearly shows that those with elevated homocysteine levels, they're more likely later in life to be more prone to Alzheimer's and dementia. And so when I look at homocysteine, besides, yes, it could be a cardiac inflammation marker. Yes, it could indicate methylation type issues. But at the end of it, what are the nutrients that really drive that either lack of going up or having enough bringing it down? And there come the three things: vitamin B12 and your essential fatty acids and your coenzyme Q10. So then
Okay.
again, I'm looking at, well, does this person have a dietary that has those ingredients rich enough? And I think there's a lot of diet philosophies out there. And I think people get stuck in these diet philosophies rather than looking at biochemical facts. And they're so arguing about this and that and the other. And I'm going, "Well, but it doesn't make any biochemical sense. And and there and there are some more well-known people out there that are also spouting stuff out that doesn't make any biochemical sense. So I think people are in a really difficult position these days because we have loads of information. But just because it's out there doesn't always mean that it's right. So I think it goes again back to what we said earlier. You have to be proactive about your health. And if you can find a practitioner that you can work with that is able to get you proper testing and help to guide you through it, along with maybe some of these fit devices that we have. I don't like some of them, but I think some of them can help push people in the right direction. And I think that can be very useful as well. Any thoughts on those things?
Absolutely, and thank you. What many of the things that you offer in your practice are what I, as a simple guy, call X factors. Does vibration help heal? Yes. Does light help heal? Does sauna help heal? Well, it has for thousands of years. Maybe we should do more saunas and warm baths, those kinds of things. So I actually devoted a chapter in both Strongly Save in the new book, Burden or Banish about heart disease, about these X factors. And I agree with you that we're deluged with, heck, the Wall Street Journal last weekend talked about this Aura ring, and is it a curse or a blessing? And the answer is yes. And yet, for 4 years, I will share that this device, and I think it's okay to say a brand name on your show. If not, I apologize. But
It's
there are other
fine.
ones
We're,
out
we're not
there.
we're not selling them, so it's fine.
And yeah, I have no relationship with Aura other than I do know that this ring, for the ladies, it's tremendously accurate, the younger ladies, at predicting their monthly cycles, which is important for performance and,
Hmm.
lifestyle. For me, this ring told me that something was wrong 2 days before I came down with COVID-19 in Athenry, Ireland. This said, hey, your heart rate variability's down, your respiration is up, what's going on? And I'm on vacation. Everything should be fine, right? I had a nice
Yeah.
Irish dinner, salmon and maybe a pint. Yeah, I had a pint. But the ring told me something was wrong, and we know that with, COVID, early response is better than, letting things cascade as the cytokines happen. Also, this ring told me I had shingles. It didn't say, hey, Dave, you have shingles. This ring said your temperature, your respiration, your sleep patterns are all hosed. What's going on? And then classic 2 days later, the one-sided adult measles. This has, in my life, has made a difference. And now that I am a practitioner of teaching other people how to live long and live well with that 7S framework, I focus on things like, what is your resting heart rate? What is your heart rate variability? What is your resilience? And what are the trends, right? So one of the things I'm fascinated by, I shared that in this 2 weeks, I have a big inflammatory event coming up, Dr. Rocker. And this ring, it's not precise or accurate, but it says my heart age is not as good as it was 2 weeks ago. Well,
Yeah.
I've been doing a whole lot of inflammatory things, and I think it's going to bounce back. My endothelia will say, okay, dude, you went through a lot of stress, you're going to get better. But I argue that knowledge can be power. You're absolutely right. We get too much data, too much information, not enough actionable knowledge. And I know that it can be costly. Yes, I do I don't like to wear a chest strap for heart rate, which is the most accurate. But for most things, just a check of pulse rate to be in the right training zone for me is appropriate as an athlete. So I argue, see what you can do for cheap, see what you can do for analog before you go digital. And if you go digital, be a smart buyer, be a smart consumer, and don't buy the most expensive thing with features and functions you will never use. So I find it amazing that many ladies tell me that they have sleep problems. The clients and even my blessed wife. I say, okay, and you have a Apple Watch, if I can use a brand name. And she said, yes. And I said, do you wear when you sleep? And she said, no. And I asked then, how can you measure the important things of, resting heart rate variability, stress levels, and monitoring 1/4 to 1/3 of your life if it's charging when it should be measuring? So isn't it interesting that the device can't do the work for you, and yet I argue selectively these X factors, such as perhaps a fitness appliance, can be helpful. What's most important? Get a water bottle that doesn't have chemicals in the plastic of it, and a towel, and go move. That's most important. But can X factors like digital devices help? Yeah, I argue that yes, they can selectively, but I wouldn't run out and buy everything.
Yeah. I would agree. I kind of resisted him for a while, and I got a various kind of fitness watch, and yeah, I was a little hesitant at the beginning, but then when I played around with it more, and like you said, started wearing it at night, you started to notice a lot of interesting information coming up, and little things like how an extra hour of sleep can benefit you, how an extra 2,000 steps changes your score, and various things like that. And actually, at the end of the day, now I'm going, well, yeah, you know what? I do need to get to bed on time, or I do need to take the dog for another walk, or whatever the whatever the case is. Yeah, I think it's helpful. Yeah, absolutely. Um,
But they can't do
okay,
the work
so
for
you
you,
mentioned a
right?
lot of yeah,
They
yeah.
can't do the work
So
for you.
okay, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So you're still competing, and some would say you're competing at a high level still. So what does your training and routine look like?
So, if I can use the weekly basis as kind of a micro periodization, and
Yeah,
incidentally, after 17 years, the American College of Sport Medicine says, well, maybe we focus too much on periodization and not just on general effort. So earlier we chatted about rules changing, common sense, rationality, entering into these very structured things like periodization, how hard, how fast, how often. So I call my approach the dulce vita, and vita, dulce for sweet, but vita, volume, intensity, tempo, and adapting as I work toward a competition. So the volume of my in Met hours. I like Met hours much better, and it helps having a device to measure that. But what is the intensity of your either your strength or your endurance work times the time that you do it, and is it enough to help you down age? So the answer is I do strength training, dedicated strength training, 2 days a week. As an older guy, I need 2 days to recover fully. The second day, I'm more sore with delayed onset of muscle soreness than the first day. So for me, it would be a Monday, Thursday, twice a week. Folks at about 50 or so or younger can probably lift diligently 3 times a week. One of the myths that I didn't pile on earlier when you asked about when I said strength, it is so important for coronary health, cardiovascular health, to continue to do strength training. We know more and more that mid and higher intensity work, not too much, but more enough higher intensity work helps your cardiovascular system, as well as hopefully helps with hypertension and those kinds of things. So I'm sorry, I drew a blank on the the original question, Dr. Rocker. I was rambling
No,
there, but
I was saying just what your own training and routine were
the
looking
rank.
like. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yep.
So in Med hours, right now I'm a little higher because I'm getting ready to row 12 hours in a 24-hour period. So it's pretty high. And what I'm trying to do, as a rule of thumb, if I do an hour of cardiovascular endurance training 4 days a week, do strength training and body weight and gentle stretching and walking 2 days a week, I always take one day off. And I know people will say, well, why do you do that? And I say, because you want to miss it. You want to be excited about the next day after a day off. And it helps our bodies kind of think about homeostasis again, too. Hey, you really missed exercise. Aren't you excited to get back to it? So in my case, 4 days of at least an hour a day of appropriate endurance work, 2 days of strength training, and that doesn't take long. A myth about strength training, it takes hours and hours. No, it doesn't. You can get a very good strength workout in after warming up appropriately in less than an hour, and it's a wonderful way to spend about 1% of your week in strength training to better you and possibly help you get 7 to 10 extra healthy years in your life. So 4 days, as I say, 4 days of cardiovascular, 2 days of strength, which, by the way, does help cardiovascular, and one day
Mm.
off. And then I'll change as I get toward a peak competition. The race that I had last weekend was 2,000 meters. It's called a sprint distance, so I did more high intensity work. But as a rule of thumb, if I do, let's just say I do 6 hours a week of endurance training, only 20% of that, or about an hour, should be high intensity. When I was in college back
Right.
rowing, it was like 60-40. We want more high intensity. And now we're finding out that 80-20, 80% low intensity zone 1 and 2 capacity building for mitochondria and arteries is a pretty good benchmark, and also helps with that inflammatory stuff. Too much, too hard for too long is not healthy. We don't know how much, but we know too much, too hard, too long is not healthy. So
Yeah. Yeah.
hope that answered it.
Absolutely.
4, 2, and 1. 4 days
Yeah.
endurance, 2 days of strength, one day off.
Okay. So then, what are the non-negotiables for maintaining strength and function as we age?
Yeah. So, and another myth that we talk about is you have to move joints to stay strong,
Yeah.
and not really, right? You can hold a plank and have good endured strength, functional strength work too. So I would love if more people embraced isometrics as well as isotonics, moving
Mm.
joints. But so much of what, as we get older, of course, one of the things, and hopefully not too many of your folks that come into the clinic, about 1/3 of every American over the age of 65 falls every year. And if they go to the emergency
Mm.
room, bad things happen. And there's no good outcome that comes from a broken hip, a broken elbow, or a broken wrist. Nothing is good for that. So how do we, number one, prevent falls? You have to have the neuromuscular system so that if you trip, you don't fall. But if you did happen to fall, you don't break something because you have muscle as cushion. Back to sarcopenia. We don't want to lose flesh. We don't want to lose skeletal muscle. So it's non-negotiable that you give up strength training. Now, could it be body weight? Yes. Could it be resistance bands? Absolutely. Could it be the grandkids? Yes. Could it be carrying heavy groceries instead of having the delivery service do it? Yes. But we're mammals, and mammals are meant to move, and move heavy stuff is very, very good medicine. So that, to me, that is non-negotiable. You stop moving heavy stuff, you start compromising your independence, and that trajectory does become more linear toward being a burden to your offspring.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned before about having rest days, and I think a big issue sometimes is people do too much. We're in a day where everybody's doing too much. I think more is always better. So, what role does recovery and sleep play in longevity in your perspective?
Oh, well, even before sleep, I have a wonderful wife who says, "Well, you're a little snippy. I think you're overtrained." So even before the next morning, when my fitness appliance says your heart rate variability's down and your resting heart rate was up, my wife would say, I think you're overtrained. But perceived exertion and heart rate certainly are key. But it's not just that. It could be, hey, the weather's changing. Maybe you're a little dehydrated, because we know that one of the first signs of fatigue is that you're dehydrated. If you're thirsty now, you should have drunk 20 minutes ago, right? So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
so it is, unfortunately, we don't know until the next morning whether what I did yesterday and the sleep that I had last night was what I needed to be ready to do my periodization for the next day. And yet, it's a good data point. I do know that you can run yourself into the ground. There's so many cases of wonderful athletes overtraining and not being able to peak at the right time because their mind and body were just spent. Their reserves were done. So.
yeah, yeah. So then, for someone listening who feels like they've lost it physically, what would be a good starting point, or where should they start?
I would start with the muscle between our ears, and I don't mean that in a glib way.
Yeah,
Attitude is so important to say, yes, I can make a tiny difference. I studied just last week. I haven't checked into the double blind nature of it, but it
yeah,
implied, like you shared earlier, Dr. Rocker, that on the margins, maybe 10% more steps can decrease your total morbidity by 10%. Now, what does that mean? But maybe just a little bit extra is enough without doing a whole lot extra that isn't helpful. So it's rational. It's approaching with am I, what are my goals and what can I do? And can I do it myself, or do I need a buddy? Do I need a coach? Or, again, we want you to be resourceful. We want you to be a student of your endeavor. Surround yourself with resources and ask lots of questions to get to root causes. If you have a shoulder that just isn't right, well, is it because you're playing pickleball and you didn't warm up properly? By the way, that's our number one injury. When I was a flexologist and still am, but I saw more pickleball injuries than golf or tennis for aging athletes because they don't warm up and they think they're chasing yesterday and they're performing like they're 22-year-olds. And then they get tendinitis, which, as you know, can take you out for a long time if it really gets
yeah,
inflamed. So being rational is something, but also the realization that starting is so much more important. I didn't do very well in math, but I know there's a big difference between 1 and 0. If you do nothing, that's not good. If you do a little, like 1, it can mean a whole lot over time. And if we talk about your body as an amazing thing, a system, but I call it your physical portfolio. And it's those 7 S's: strength, stability, stamina, stretching, don't stress, sleep, anti-inflammatory, sustenance. And will your bank outlast you? Will you have reserves that will be there for the rest of your earthly days before your epitaph is written? And I argue that if you do a little in that balanced approach, and maybe do some of the X factors like investigate saunas or red light therapy, or hey, I try to do the vibration plate every day. Why did I get a vibration plate? Because I have a client with a hereditary spastic paraplegia, and the British folks say that vibration helps that person's neuromuscular system hang on. He's on a terrible trajectory for losing his independence and mobility, but he's fighting it. And he's fighting it with not
Yeah.
only motion, but he's fighting it with technology like vibration and electrical stimulation. So um, I just hope that folks know that there are alternatives to polypharmacy. I guess that's kind of one of my takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said. Zero, one is better than zero. So if we're going on simple things, then what would be the simplest habits that somebody or sorry, let me rephrase that. What are the simplest habits that give the biggest returns over time?
Ah, well, and again, this is not meant to be trivial, but I have a mnemonic aid called Morning. And
Yeah.
yes, it did start with Admiral McRaven, who said, make your bed. So the M is make your bed. But then give yourself a big hug and then start the work, the meridians of your body to get the vital forces flowing as you wake up before you have a cup of coffee. And I always say, have lemon water to celebrate your liver and your hardworking liver, all it does in modern life. Before you have a stimulant, if you're going to have tea or coffee, but the most important thing is to, in a way of gratitude, is to say this is a day of motion. And
Right.
when I'm ready, I'm going to move heavy things if today is a move a heavy thing day. But even if it's moved my body, I'm about 100 kilos, believe it or not. And I move that 100 kilos. It's helping my metabolism. It's helping my joints, my connective tissue. And hopefully the right motion is keeping that vital force, that, the yin and the yang in balance. So just start by moving, even if you're sick, unless you had a respiratory thing that's really deep in your lungs. I say do something gentle, even if it's just stretching or mindful breathing. But one of the most important systems that we tend to take for granted is our respiratory system. And we know that VO2 max and VLA max are two of the amazing statistics for longevity. The Norwegian studies are very profound, that if you're cardiovascular and cardiorespiratory system are good, you're probably going to be around unless you get hit by a Greyhound bus. But we take our lungs for granted, and I don't think people realize how hard the lungs have to work to do the gas exchange and to make it possible that you can get oxygen to your brain and to your body. And where does that start? It doesn't have to be running a marathon. It can start with mindful breathing. And I think everybody can find 1 minute a day to exercise diaphragm breathing, and maybe the 4x4, 4-7-8. I know there are many, many different breathing techniques for mindful breathing, but that's one of the
Yeah.
best exercises we can all do to. I mean, Navy snipers, Navy SEALs do 4x4 breathing before they take their long range sniper shot, because it calms, the blood pressure's down, the respiration's down, and they're ready to perform. So breathing and using your diaphragm is one of the most um, to to go downward and to expand the lung capacity is tremendous. I mean, a lot of my grandfather was a country doctor. He used to call pneumonia the gentleman's disease, because as you
Yeah.
slow down and you lose your respiratory capacity, bad things start to happen. And sometimes they happen peacefully, but I don't want to die from pneumonia. I've had it twice. I don't want to die from pneumonia, you know. So I want to die from finishing a rowing race, in first place. But it's
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the breathing is really important, and I don't think it's something that's talked about enough. I always say I don't think most people really know how to breathe. That may sound funny, but you mentioned earlier on about the vagal tone and working the vagal nerve, and breathing is a part of that. The humming, the singing is all good on that. The cold showers. It kind of made me laugh because I'm sure that some people in my house think I'm nuts, and maybe the neighbors if the window's open, because I end my shower with a minute cold shower, and then when I'm done, I do the pound on the thymus gland, and I yell like I'm Tarzan, and so they probably think I'm nuts.
But you know, and another thing where I think your functional and integrated medicine helps so much is the endocrinal system. Unless unless you're lucky in America and find the right specialist, you're on your own to figure out how to work your happy hormones and how to. I call it a four-valve trumpet. You know, your
Mm,
oxytocin, the hugging hormone, your dopamine for motivation, and your serotonin, which, by the way, you need restored to sleep if you're going to have good serotonin levels. But those three valves can be overcome by the fourth one, cortisol, if we let it, right? So we want
yeah,
our parasympathetic, the vagals, to be a bigger part of our lives. And we want our endocrines to be happy, and we want them to be working for us, not working against us. So.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, So how do you help people break out of it? It's this kind of, we talked about mindset, that it's the woe is me, or it's too late for me mentality. How do you get people to break out of that?
Well, in some cases, I ask them to look in the mirror. You know,
Hmm.
mirrors, spandex, and drunks and children don't lie, right? So we want truth. And if you look in the mirror and you're happy with yesterday, working with a client, busy lawyer, and he just looked beat. This is the day after Easter, and it was a busy holiday weekend. Isn't it interesting? The holidays can become stressful. But I said, whoa, what is going on? Your face looks really stressed. And he said, oh, I was playing pickleball. I just broke my metatarsal for the third time. And I said, oh, so number one, look in the mirror. Are you happy with what you see? Or do you see that you're not a composed, relaxed, and resilient individual? Number two, perhaps look to someone like me. I'm not the youngest trainer on the planet, and I never ask one of my clients or people that I know or the people that I teach in rowing classes to do something that I don't do. So it's not anything other than to say, if I can do it, let's see if you can do it. So by example, I think is the second part. And the third part is just uh, not to be a platitude, but believe to achieve. What did you do in younger day that you, for whatever reason, have compromised and are no longer able to do or choose not to do? And can we change that? What are those habits that we can change? And it's not New Year's resolution because we know how many of those fail, but it's what are resilient things that you used to do that you can brag about and write about to your kids and grandkids? What can you be proud of? So pride maybe is the third one. First one is
Mm,
look in the mirror, self-realization. The second is find somebody, perhaps your same demographic group, that is doing things that you might be able to emulate. And the third is that just what can I be proud of? And it doesn't have to be set an Olympic record. It's just what can I be proud of to make, my grandkids say, man, Grammy really did something cool, that kind of thing. She got up from the ground without using her hands, that,
yeah, yeah.
uh, you know, those three things I think are it.
Excellent. So where do you think the future of longevity and health is heading now in this modern day?
Well, I hope that it is. I saw an article which I love and I embrace. We talk about
Mm,
spans a lot, Dr. Rocker, and
yeah.
lifespan is, I guess that's a goal. Most of us, I have some people say, I don't want to live as long as my mom did. And I said, why not? Well, she was tired and didn't have her mojo at the end of life. And I said, did it have to be that way? And, oh,
Mhm.
probably not. So, of the spans, I think of strength span, and I think of health span,
Yeah.
and as well as lifespan. So in America, it is, to me, it's an absolute travesty that about 15% of the average adult's lifespan is unhealthy, meaning a debilitating condition or something that keeps them from being a full person, a man in full, a woman in full. 15%. So okay, American woman lives to 78, so 1/6 of that. 13 years of the average American woman's life is unhealthy. What is wrong with that?
Mhm.
Wouldn't it be like, Queen Elizabeth? Um, You stop, you drop. 96, interview the prime minister, and then drop. Boom. Now, of
Yeah.
course, she had great medical care and all that sort of stuff. But to me, it is an absolute travesty that too much of our lifespan is spent in unhealthy ways or less than optimal ways. And what can we do to help that? Work on your gluttony, work on your sloth are the two big things, and sleep. So.
Yeah. 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 So then, if you could give one piece of advice to someone who wants to stay strong, capable, and independent into their later life, what would it be?
Move stuff and try to move heavy stuff. Appropriately heavy stuff is good medicine. Now,
Yeah.
not to gloss over diet or sleep, but if it was
Yeah.
a three-legged stool, Dr. Rocker, I'd say that strength, sleep, and diet. Strength meaning could be endured strength as well as muscular strength. But figure out, can I lift that 5-pound bag of sugar? Could I get wrist
Yeah.
weights when I go for my walk with the grandkids? Could I do little successful steps that will compound over time to build a better physical bank? Just small
Excellent.
ways to move heavy stuff. Now, what's heavy? It's relative, right? But you must
Yeah.
have an
Yeah.
unabridged dictionary
Absolutely.
back there
Yeah.
you can give to your client and say, do some presses with it or
Oh,
something.
I'm sure there's one back there somewhere. Yeah. so just to kind of finalize, and maybe your last comment has part of this in here, but you have your term living well into the 90s. So what does living well into the 90s actually look like to you?
Yes, it is. To me, it is independent or nearly so. Now, it could be eyesight or other reasons why you can't drive. But in America, you lose your driving. That's the first step of the slippery slope of not being independent. Um, uh, what makes a centenarian, from the blue zones? Multi-generational families, purpose,
Mhm.
good diet, and appropriate activities of daily life, not crazy bungee jumping or running marathons. But those five things, maybe that's not 100% accurate, but those five things are really important. So to thrive and strive in your 90s, you have to we have to avert dementia-related diseases by staying active, doing crossword puzzles, getting the berries, getting the oxygen and the sugar to your brain, and not having clogged arteries leading to your brain. Um, so the purpose, having family around you. We know more and more that the type of sport as we age, is more important than the sport, meaning group sports help you live longer than single sports, which is interesting because of the social aspect. So if there's a way to exercise, move a heavy stuff in a social setting, whether it's a Pilates class or a group fitness class, or wearing a weighted vest or weighted wristbands to go for your walk in nature, those things will help you thrive and strive. But again, a lot of it is the muscle between your ears.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Well, gee, I'd like to thank you. I think there's a lot of great advice that you've given to people, and it's very practical advice. It's not expensive advice. It's things that people can do anywhere, anytime. So I think that's great. Um, so, Dave, you've got a bit of your own work and you've got your own books, and so if where can people find out more about your work, learn more about what you're doing, if they want to stay in contact with you? What can you tell them?
Oh, well, thank you for that, Dr. Rocker. My main website, my company name is Well Past 40. And so the main website is Well Past 40, and that's spelled FORTY.org. And then I'm on the social media platforms as Well Past 40 or David Emerson Frost. But I'd love to engage with anyone. If you have any military listeners, I thank them for their service. And if they reach out to me via the website, I'd be happy to send whatever they need to help them on their journeys, a copy of Strong to Save or whatever, or just chat with them because, the world's a crazy place, but it's good to have policemen that keep us safe. So thank them and thank you. So,
Absolutely, and thank you for your work and dedication as well. That's great. What we'll do is we'll make sure we'll put all the excuse me, all of those details into the show notes for people to make it easy for them. And I encourage everybody to get in touch with Dave. And support his great works, and keep moving, keep active, keep fit, and all those good things that you mentioned. I think that's fantastic. And and people, please like and share and subscribe. I know it may sound a little bit cheesy, but in this day and age where sometimes a lot of voices and information gets censored or not put out there, this is the only way that it really gets out there. So please share it with people that can benefit from it. And I'm sure you'll be helping somebody with that. So, with that in mind, I'd like to thank our listeners. And David, I'd like to thank you once again for being a part of the Integrative Continuum. And hopefully we'll run past again in the near future.
I look forward to that, and I can't wait to get back to County Clare to say hi.
Actually, you come on here and we'll do a little bit of hiking and moving those body, yeah?
Absolutely.
All right, all the best. Take care, everybody. Until next time, see you later. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me on the Integrative Continuum. I hope today's conversation gave you new insights and practical tools for your own health journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with someone who would benefit, and leave us a review. It helps us spread this message further. Until next time, I'm Dr. Richard Rocker. Stay curious, stay empowered, and keep moving forward on your path to integrative health.